Arithmetic, extracting the root. Last time, in the powers video, we looked at a square made out of oranges that looked something like this. We made a 5 by 5 square, 5 squared, i.e. made into a square with 5 rows and 5 columns, 5 times 5. The way to extract the root of a number is to assume that the number is a total amount of cells in a square, such that we have something that looks kind of like this, and we can remove these initial lines. We can then number these cells, and we can even then remove the oranges. So we can see that 5 squared would give us 25 squares. The root would be the amount of cells in the first row or column. We can write it something like this. The sum, which is denoted with this Greek letter, the sum of the blue squares is equal to x, which is in this case 25. As we said, the root of a square is the length of the side, so the square root of this would be 5. And we can write it like this. The root, this is the root symbol, of x, in this case, would be the root of 25. The square root of x is the row number times the column number. And in squares, we assume that the row number should be equal to the column number. That's what makes it a square. So therefore, the square root of x is either the number of squares in the row, or the square root of x is the number of squares in the column. So in this case, we have 5. Example. Find the side length of a square with area A, 100 meters squared, B, 81 feet squared, C, 64 miles squared, D, 400 centimeters squared. A, 100 meters squared. Let's separate the units from the numbers with this little square bracket. So this would give us then 10 meters times 10 meters. And we separate these units. So in a sense, we could write this as two different equations. That a meter squared is equal to a meter times a meter, and that 100 is 10 squared, so it is 10 times 10. Therefore, the square root of 100 would only be one of the two, 10. Because the square root takes a power and asks, what is the base? 10. Another method would be to make a factor tree. A factor tree is where you look for all of the numbers that multiply into the number you are looking for. So in this case, we can start with 2 and 50. 2 times 50 is 100. We also have 4 and 25. 4 quarters make $1. We also have 5 and 20. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Finally, we also have 10, 10. If you have two numbers in the center like this that multiply, that is what the square root is looking for. This would give us then 10 meters. B, 81 feet squared. If we make a factor tree, we have 1 and 81. We have 3 and 27. And 9 and 9. The square root of 81 is 9. This would be then 9 feet. C, 64 miles squared. 64, let's break this up into a tree. We'd have 1 and 64, of course. If we divide 2, that would get us 32, half of 64. Take another 2 out of that, you should get yourself 16. Take another 2 out of that, and you should get 8. The square root of 64, 8. So that would be 8 miles. D, 400 centimeters squared. Breaking this up again. Go 1, 400. 2, 200. Times this one by 2. Divide this one by 2. Expand. Go up by 2 again, and we'd have 10. And we'd have 40. And then finally, we'd have 20 and 20. So the square root, 400, is 20. So that's 20 centimeters. Extracting the root of a number allows us to reduce a square area, like the area in a square room, down to the length of one side of that square room, which would tell us the size of the boards we would need to make some floorboards. Let's look at that as an example. You live in a house with a square room. You were told the room was 144 meters squared. You want to replace the baseboards. That means you need to find the length of the walls. Given only that the area is 144 meters squared and that the room is a square, how long are the sides? How long of baseboards are you going to need to buy? If we are given 144 meters squared, we can remove these for now, such that it would be, say, x meters times x meters. And we can focus on the 144 equals x times x. And that the square root of 144 will then just be x. Let's make a factor tree. 144. We have 144 and we divide 1. We'd get 144. If we divide it by 2, we'd get, how many times does 2 go into 14? 7. How many times does 2 go into 4? Twice. It's 72. If we were to divide 3, we would get 48. If we were to divide by 4, we would get 36. If we divide by 5, we don't get an even number, but if we divide by 6, we get 24. Now let's divide by 8. What do we get? 18. Getting closer. If we divide by 12, we get 12. We found a repeating number, which means that this can be x, and this can be x, and x can equal x. Therefore, 12 times 12 must equal 144. We can check that even. 12 times 12. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 1 is 2. We add a 0 here to move up to the tens place. 1 times 2, 2. 1 times 1, 1. Add together the tens place and the ones place values, and we get 144. Therefore, the square root of 144 would be 12. We started with 144 meters squared. So we have, in taking the square root, 12 meters. So returning to our image, if in a square room, these walls would be 12 meters each. When it comes to extracting the root, just remember that if plus or minus x squared is going to equal k, then x equals the plus or minus of the square root of k. Or, if k equals x squared, which is x times x, then the square root of k is going to be equal to one of those x's. And that brings us to the end of extracting the root. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, go ahead and leave any comments you have, and don't forget to support us at Patreon. See you guys next time.